So my neighbor brought me up some white oak, and I ripped it down and run it through the shaper, and then ripped it down to make blanks for wingtip bows. And those turned out pretty good, but I've got to steam them to bend them to make the shape on the wingtips. And I'm going to use one of my wife's pressure cookers for a steam generator. I can take and run a tube off of this vent right here and run it into the chamber. Normally, when I've steam bent, I've just used an open pot and closed it up and made a funnel for it to run steam into a place. Water, when it boils at 212 degrees at sea level, which we're pretty close to sea level right here. And the hotter the steam, the better. I was just watching a guy that does refurbishment and building of old wooden wagons and stuff like that, Engels Coach Shop in Montana, and he had a little treatise on steam bending, and he uses a pressure chamber to bend his stuff, and he bends some pretty amazing thick stuff and whatnot for repairing these old wagons and building new old wagons and stuff. Building new old wagons. Pretty good treatise he had on there. It had one thing that he had on there that I disagreed with was he said you couldn't bend coniferous trees. You could only bend deciduous trees, oak and maple and things like that. And I've steam bent yellow cedar and red cedar, Sitka spruce, and Doug fir before, so I know you can bend deciduous trees. You can't bend hemlock, and you can't bend western larch, tamarack, but you can bend Douglas fir and spruce. I don't know about pines and stuff. I've never tried that. Well, anyway, I'm going to make a steam generator out of this pressure cooker. This is an old pressure cooker, one of my wife's old pressure cookers, and this is actually one that we found out in the woods abandoned. A fella I know built a trespass cabin on a lake here in the wilderness that he used to take his family out to on the summertime on good days and stuff to camp out and have fun in. Well, that had been abandoned for several years, and I used to go out there once in a while just to take a break, stop there and take a break once in a while. But several years ago, about 25 years ago or so, a fella, I think out of Australia, decided he wanted to live in the bush and outback, and so he had somebody fly him out there and drop him off at that cabin, and he was going to live the wilderness life. And he had the pressure cooker. He was killing deer and canning meat and catching fish and canning fish and stuff like that. Well, he went bush crazy. Somebody pulled him out of there before he actually did harm to himself, but he went crazy and just left everything behind. Well, my wife and I stopped out there one time and looking around, and he had cases of beer out there, and the bears had gotten into all the beer and all his canned food and stuff, but he had some stuff left there, some old jars and things that we salvaged, and this pressure cooker was one of the things we got there. It was kind of an interesting story. So anyway, I'm going to take this pressure cooker and use it. It's got a weight on here that fits on this little vent and just bounces up and down to regulate the pressure in the pot when you're cooking. But that'll get the temperature up pretty good, and like I said, I can use this to boil water in and make steam for my steam generate and stuff, and I don't need this stuff in there to do that. I will need the gasket on there. Oh, anyway, that's the plan. Probably get some vegetable oil and put on this gasket. I took the calibrated orifice out of the lid of the pressure cooker. Here's the calibrated orifice here. Determined that it was an 1/8 inch pipe thread. So I went down to my stash and found a hose barb with a 3/8 inch hose barb on one end and an 1/8 inch pipe thread on the other end. Got some 3/8 inch fuel hose and slid on there. I'll screw that into the lid of the pressure cooker, and then that will vent the steam from the pressure cooker into my steam chamber. I got a 10-foot length of 4-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe to use for my steam chamber. I glued a cap on one end of it, and then the other end of it I've set up for this clean out. There's a threaded end that is glued into the PVC pipe, and then this threaded clean out threads into that. to close it off. I drilled that out 1/2 inch and then threaded in this male air hose quick connector into that, and that threaded in there tight. But because it's going into a plastic, I was kind of worried that it might not hold up under use. So I found a coupler that fit on the other side of it that threaded into the air hose quick connector, and threaded that in there for a backup. And that turned out to be a good thing, because once we started putting heat to it, everything got soft, and it would have pulled out the quick connector if it hadn't had that backup on it. Then I got a female quick connector, and I've got a 3/8 inch hose barb that I've threaded into the quick connector, and I can put my 3/8 inch fuel hose into that, and then I can connect that up to the PVC pipe. I can hook it up to there, and it worked out great because the quick connectors are swivel, so unthreading the clean out from the pipe worked out really good. You could unscrew it without taking that hose off there because of the swivel action of the air hose quick connectors. You don't want to take the quick connector off there while you've got pressure in the pressure pot there, or it might blow up. But for the swivel action for taking it on and off of the cap, that worked out great. This is the burner I'm going to use to heat the water up with. It's a propane burner. We found this, actually it had been left abandoned out on the beach somewhere, and it's all rusted up here, which doesn't affect the use of it much, except, oh, that's working. Okay, I was going to say except for this air control. Okay, that works. I get that to move. Alright, well, I guess that's it. Now I need to go down and get some propane, and then we'll be all set to start cooking some wood. Alright, this is going to be my jig, my bending jig, and I can use clamps to clamp this in like this. Now it actually what I did is I laid out the wingtip bow, and even though it's broken in 2 places there, I kind of lined those up. Drew a line out here on this piece of plywood for that line, and then put them on the bandsaw and cut them off. So I've got both a positive and a negative on that. And then I've screwed it down to the plywood sheet here. This is a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, but it's sitting on another 3/4 inch piece of plywood, and it's a table that I made to hold pickup camper when we had a pickup camper that went the way of all things here, southeast Alaska, back to nature. But anyway, this is what I've got for a clamp-a-jig now. And unfortunately, like I said, everything's outside where it's cool, so I got to be really quick. My steam box is going to be right over here, about 10 steps away. There's the steam box where it's going to be, and so it's sitting a little bit downhill. So the other end of it is just a little bit lower than this end. And I put a hole in the bottom of it on the other end with a number 30 drill bit, just so it doesn't overpressurize and so the steam can move through it. Set that up yesterday and put those in there to soak. Anybody wants to know how much water a 4-inch, 10-foot long PVC piece of pipe holds, it's about 4 gallons. Now we've got to go to town and get some propane in our propane jug. This is all ready to go. Well, I went down and got my propane bottles filled up and hooked up the cooker, and it worked. So I thought I'd go ahead and do a dry run of this. Perhaps I should call it a wet run since we got water in there. But I put a gallon of water so in that pressure cooker and got it hooked up to my steam chamber, my steam box. I don't have any wood in there yet. I'm just all right, you guys, go on. attacked by guineas here. Guinea fowl. Anyway, I guess don't have any wood in the steam box yet. I just wanted to give it a try and see how it's going to work. Just got the fire going, and the water's cold. It's water that was sitting out here. Got a little stand there to hold the hose up. That's just a 3/8 fuel line on there. Wife was worried about watching the pressure on it. It shouldn't build up hardly any pressure on there because I took the restrictor orifice out of it. Should just vent steam right straight out into that hose and into the steam box. But we'll figure it out. That's what we're doing here. Just trying it out and figuring it out. Yeah, the first try was a fail. Got the water boiling, but that gasket on that pressure cooker failed, and all of the pressure, all the steam was coming out around the lid there. My wife said that gasket didn't seal very well sometimes, so I'll let it cool off, take it apart, and see what I can do about that. I may have to go get another pressure cooker and use that one. Put that one aside. Well, it's working now. My wife helped me with it. She knows how to work that pressure cooker. The gasket doesn't get in it quite right, and so we let it cool off and pulled it off there and readjusted the gasket and got it on there, and now it's holding pretty good. So it's piping steam now. Of course, got a little leak here and there, but down here on the end, I got a couple little vent holes down there, and I got steam coming out of that. It got hot in there, that steam, and the pipe buckled up, and then once it got stabilized and got really hot, then it dropped back down. But I'm glad I went ahead and put that reducer on that fitting in there that I drilled in through that cap, because that heated up, and that threads that come out of that started coming out of that quick connector. So it's backed up with that reducer on the inside of it there. It gives it a little more bearing surface on it. And we got steam coming out of the threads on that cap too, so it's not watertight, but that's fine. It's working, so I think maybe I might see the steam coming out of there now on that end. Well, I think I might shut it off and let it cool off again and go ahead and stick a couple of sticks in there and see how it works. Get them cooking.